President Obama is blasting Republicans who say they won't increase the federal debt limit unless the new government health care law is put on hold. The president said in an interview that he and House Speaker John Boehner should be talking about the budget right now.
I'm happy to have a conversation with him about how we can deal with the so-called sequester, which is making across-the-board cuts on stuff that we shouldn't be cutting, while continuing tax breaks, for example, for companies that are not helping to grow the economy. There are ways of doing this. It's just that they haven't been willing to negotiate in a serious way on that. What I haven't been willing to negotiate, and I will not negotiate, is on the debt ceiling.
But the president's also getting static from congressional Democrats, and that resistance may have just cost the president his top pick to run the Federal Reserve. CBS News analyst and Republican strategist Frank Luntz is here. Frank, good morning.
Good morning. It is chaos in Washington. At a time when the Americans are hoping that the economy is on the right track, they look at their political leaders, they question their business leaders, and we see all-time lows in terms of trust, confidence, and credibility among the institutions that are supposed to lead us.
So why is it happening? Do you think it all has to do with the word civility? Is it just a very complicated process now?
I don't think it helps when a vice president uses the word Neanderthal to describe his opponents, or the Senate Majority Leader talks about anarchists in the other party. We've had these battles in the 240 years of American democracy, but we've never had it with social media. We've never had it with Twitter. And as I speak now, and you ask me questions, people are tweeting in the most angry, aggressive way possible. And so these elected officials hear from their constituents at home more than they've ever heard before, but they tend to hear from the most angry, the most partisan, the most divided. And that doesn't encourage common ground. It actually destroys it. And by the way, the consequences of this are significant. You want to talk to me today about politics. I want to talk to you about schools and education and what this means in the classroom. In the polling that I've done with teachers, they say that the kids at a younger and younger age are uncivil and are rude to each other and talk back to the teacher. And when the teachers talk to the parents, they find that same kind of attitude. I think it's coming from television. I think it's coming from politics, from the lack of people being willing to talk and, more importantly, listen.
Is it coming from television, Frank, or is it television just reflecting what is?
Well, when politicians can't sit down in a room together and have these kinds of conversations, Reagan did it. I hate referring back to the past because it seems like cheap. But Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did fundamentally disagree on virtually every issue, and yet they could come together, get these negotiations done, and actually solve the problems facing the country. In the 1980s, there were some pretty tough times.
Without destroying each other.
So whose responsibility is it to get it started, civility and dialogue and communication? Is it the president? Is it Republican congressional leaders?
It's all of them.
Is it somebody?
It's all of them.
But somebody's got to start it, and it's got to begin with a degree of trust.
If Barack Obama did a speech before Congress and said, okay, enough is enough, my door is open. Anyone can walk through. If the Speaker of the House, who changed the rules of Congress, and Nora, you've covered Capitol Hill for a long time, when John Boehner opened up the rules to allow more Democratic input, that was the most that a minority ever got in Congress.
But today the story is not about Republicans and Democrats trying to work together. We know that's long. They can't work together. The issue now is the president can't get his choice for Federal Reserve because Democrats in his own party block him. And John Boehner can't negotiate with the president on extending this funding because of his own Republicans. The government is going to run out of money on September 30th. We could have a government shutdown, and Boehner can't cut a deal because of Republicans in his own party. And that's why the president says, I'm not negotiating. That's when things get nuts.
And this is the amazing thing. You actually have the cooperation from the Speaker and the Minority Leader, from Boehner and Pelosi with the president on Syria. The hostility came from the rank and file. That you now have the elites in Washington occasionally agreeing against the other 99% of America who wonders what's going on in Washington. The traditional lines are breaking down. The communication lines are already broken. And we have 3 weeks to solve this. And I don't see a solution in the next 3 weeks.
Well, they've got to figure something out. Thank you, Frank, very much.